Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meaningful Conversations, where we have discussions with each other, with experts in different areas of health, wellness, personal development, and bringing more fun into life. Because we have really gotten away from having discussions that uplift us and really bring us to that next level of health and happiness. And that's what I'm all about here. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Denise Stegall. I'm CEO and curator at Living Healthy List. My clients often know me as the Healthy Living Liaison. And here I am, the host of Meaningful Conversations. I am really excited about today's conversation because it is so timely and so fitting with the holidays not too far away. So we're going to be talking today with Carlee Myers, and I'm going to read Carlee's bio. Carlee is the founder of the Stress Less Company and an expert at helping leaders reduce stress and create fulfilling relationships of all kinds. Carlee is a diplomat of the American Institute of Stress and a certified safe conversations facilitator and workshop leader, and has had her work most recently featured in media outlets such as Parade, pretty cool, Fox 29, Good Day Philadelphia, the Maui News, and Holy Magazine. So Carlee, welcome so much to Meaningful Conversations. Really excited about that. So this is your bio. This is who Carlee is on paper. Who is Carlee in real life?
Well, all those things on paper are true. But I think, who am I in real life? I think you'll get a sense for me through my energy. I am a lot of, I have a sense of warmth that I like to think that I have, at least. And I love to do things outside. I love to garden. I love to walk. I love to listen to music. I love to dance. So there's so much more than just, yeah, stress
Carlee,
less. All those things help me stress less.
well, and all of those things are, we are always striving and, success, those of us who are in careers, we're always striving for, the next thing, whether it's a certification or a workshop or what, we're always working towards something. And I think sometimes we can get lost in the who am I really? Our businesses, our careers are part of who we are, but they're not who we are wholly who we are. So I think it's always fun to get to know what are some of the other fun things. And I love the color of your sweater because it's fun, it's yellow, it's bright, and that to me shows your personality.
It's a sweater. It's got cozy vibes too. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's really interesting to understand who someone is outside of their profession or as part of it, like in the whole picture. There's definitely parts of my personality that get overlooked really easily. Like a concept that I'm really interested in is minimalism, which is not something that comes up very often. Do I fit the rule book of being a minimalist? Probably not, but I love the concept and the idea, and it's helped me over the years from an environmental standpoint, but also from a stress standpoint as well. So there's just like all these little interests and facets of who I am that all culminate to create,
I love
the
it.
work that I do. Yeah.
And I can see how the minimalism can actually help with de-stressing, decluttering and de-stressing. It's something that I talk about very often with my clients. So I do see how that, I personally see how that connects.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about, the holidays. I mean, here in the US, we've got American Thanksgiving coming up in what is it, a week at this point? Um,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks.
No, no,
I'm
no, I think
fast
you're right.
forwarding
It's
us.
next Thursday. I think you're right. It's next Thursday.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So yeah, it's here before we know it. Thanksgiving hasn't happened yet, but the stores are already ready for Christmas. So we're here. Tis the season.
Tis the season. We are upon, actually funny that you say that. You're gonna laugh. What I have hanging over here, I have a Christmas ornament that it actually stays here. It's me, it's a picture of me and the backs of me and my mom and my sister. And
Aw.
it was, my sister gave it to me for Christmas last year. And I never put it away. So for me, it's like, it's almost like Christmas all year long. But a
Oh,
little bit. I don't like a lot of Christmas all year long. There's
I
too
love
much
it.
stress there. Well, before we dive into that, I want to hear a little bit about how you became the founder of the Stress Less company. Like, how did that transpire? Did you, when you went to college, you didn't go, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start this company. So really would love to know like how that, how your career path went there. And then a little bit about, the American Institute of Stress and being a certified safe conversation uh, facilitator, because I think that'll really nicely roll into what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. So the reason that I ended up creating the Stress Less company was actually because of an experience that I had as a kid. I was about 12 years old, and my mom was basically a man broke into my childhood home, killed my mom's new boyfriend, and tried to kill my mom. Um, and luckily, my mom ended up making a miraculous recovery, which was an absolute miracle. But I ended up really struggling for a long time, with the symptoms of PTSD, night terrors, jumpiness, anxiety, stress. There was a lot going on in my world. I
Yeah.
was, yeah, 12 years old. My sister was 17. So we had our slew of preteen and teenager problems. My parents weren't quite divorced yet. So my mom being shot by a new ex-boyfriend, I should say, made things a little bit complicated. We had the court stuff. We had, my mom in medically induced coma, trying to navigate. So there was a lot for us to navigate during that time. And what I learned is, well, two things. First is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to stress management, when it comes to finding that inner freedom. There are mainstream approaches that work for a lot of people, but they don't work for everyone. And so I was one of those people where they certainly helped. Things like therapy, yoga, meditation, changing your diet, hitting gym, right? Those things certainly helped, but they didn't get me over that hump where I was experiencing that beautiful state of mind that I knew was possible. Um, so that's one side of the coin. And then the other side of the coin was I realized just how important my relationships were to my healing journey, to my process. So it took me a while to get the courage to even share with those in my life that I was struggling. And then those that that received me well, they helped my healing tenfold. But those that didn't receive me well, intentionally or unintentionally, right? Those that just didn't have the capacity, that held me back. That created, it was almost like a compound compound effect, right? I was coming to someone with trauma and hurt and pain, and then having that rejection, and then it being compounded. So I ended up creating the Stress Less company because I finally, after exploring and exploring and exploring and exploring, not being willing to accept that low grade misery as my new normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I I finally discovered some of the things that really worked and helped. And honestly, once I discovered some of these things, I was angry. Why isn't anybody talking about this? Why isn't this in the hands of more people? Why isn't this a conversation that we're having? Especially related to relationships. We preach so often that we need to take a step back, that we need to heal on our own. But the reality is we don't live in silos, and relationships are everywhere. So what do we do about it? So all that being said, I ended up creating, the Stress Less company. I ended up creating the Stress Less method, which is my signature 5-step system that helps people do that inner work that we do need to do, but also I have this relational component, which is safe conversations, to teach people how to be in relationship in a way that's going to help everyone heal and hopefully prevent trauma in the future, right?
It's amazing. What I've learned, one of the things I've learned to having these conversations is just about everyone who has started a company, a business, a program, a workshop, whatever it may be, it absolutely comes from a personal place.
Mhm.
Whether it's, like you said, trauma, whether it's stress, whether it's weight loss, whatever, there's so many different things. And I think to me, that's what makes those um, worthwhile to look into and to accept and to explore, because you've
Yeah.
already done the exploration, you've already done that work. And like me, if you can bring somebody cross the hump faster, easier, and put them on a path to to true healing. And I would agree, in our society, we always do say, be tough, it's all about you, only you can do whatever. But when you think, we're still sort of ancient people in the scope of the Big Bang Theory and all the how long the Earth has been here. We've been here for this amount of time. So in a way, we still are tribal. Even though we try not to be, we are still tribal people, and we do need those relationships and those people in our lives. Because when we don't have those people, it can be really lonely. And I don't
Yeah.
think that's how we're meant to live. Another call
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because
Pick it up.
because um it's funny too, because like there's we preach the message that we have to go into like we even hear like the healing girl era, or like where have you been? Like I'm in my healing phase, which it is synonymous with like I'm going into my space and I'm cocooning and I'm turtling and I'll come back out, Beyonce, like whatever, right? Um, but there is, what we're missing is that there is a deep survival function. There's a survival function in connection. If we take a step back and we're not just looking at, oh, like I'm in charge of regulating my emotional health, because that's usually like the lens that folks say this in. We take a step back, like we as a human race need connection to survive.
Mhm.
From a macro standpoint, for the human
Mhm.
race to survive, we have to
Yep.
have tribes. That's why that there's actually a function in the different types of attachment styles. So, there's attachment theory that we've studied, that every person has a different preference or hardwiring for how we connect. And, there's the anxiously attached, the more clingy, right? The more like, I'm going to chase after you. I need that connection kind of person. There's the avoidant, who is more of I want to be free. I don't want to be suffocated. There's a survival mechanism for that. There's what I call the combo platter, who's anxious avoidant. They lean in, they pull away. Um, they get the worst rep, but they might actually be the most adaptable for human survival purposes. And then um, the secure attachment style. Almost 50%, if not more, about 50% of the population has a secure attachment style. And that's not a mistake. We have been hardwired to have this attachment style of secure, meaning we can connect, we're comfortable with intimacy, we're also comfortable with independence, because it is a mechanism for us to make it through the hard times. Now, there's a purpose for the anxious and the avoidant, right? Every single one of these serves a purpose, but there's a reason that 50%, the vast majority of us, have secure attachment styles. I went on a little rant there, but I thought it was
No, no, no,
important to,
that's great. It's really interesting. The first thing I always actually think of is kind of like the different love languages.
yeah.
That was what the connection for me. But it's interesting. So the question that I have then, 50% of the people have this secure style. Do people Can people work on themselves and become that? Is that the goal for the people who aren't? Talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah. So what they found in the research is um, that our attachment style is, let's say, I'm going to say plastic. I don't know if that's the right word. Plastic is kind of set, but it's malleable, right?
Mhm.
So like we have our attachment styles are rather integrated into our wiring, but it's not impossible to rewire. In fact, what they found is if you're an anxious and avoidant or an anxious avoidant and you partner up with a secure person, you're more likely to become secure, right? They just happen to role model that. So who you keep company with is really useful, but also, yeah, working on just rewiring how you show up.
Mhm.
It's possible. It's possible.
Interesting. A little bit of the, who are the top 5 people that you spend your time with?
Hmm.
All of these things, it's amazing how all of these pieces of, kind of like all different topics and from, when it comes to the health and wellness world, um, they may be different, but they're all connected. And
They're all
that's one of the
connected.
things that I love about this.
Yeah.
So let's kind of transition, with this idea of, the people that have the secure, the avoider, the anxious. Let's, kind of walk into a week away from holidays, families. Um, and for some people, for me, Thanksgiving is the easiest holiday. It's just me and my husband.
Mm.
Christmas in the past has been crazy because with all the people nowadays, we spend Christmas with my mom, down in Florida, the 3 of us in the small little condo, um, and because there's only 3 of us, it's easier to manage, but not always. So
Hmm.
I can imagine when people have big families and lots of people in and out and personality types, how does that how does that affect everyone? And how do we go walk into that in a more positive way where we're not stressing, where we're actually taking steps to enjoy the holiday, not be afraid of them or worry
Yeah.
about, ooh, someone's going to say something wrong.
Yeah. I do want to comment on, it depends on the person in terms of their experience. If a large gathering would be more or less stressful, or a small gathering would be more or less stressful. I have friends who like the thought of spending alone time with their mother for extended period of time would be their worst nightmare. And others, it would be like, it would be wonderful. So, the thing about stress is there's an equation for stress. It's the thing plus our perception of the thing that equals the amount of stress that we're experiencing. So for every single person, the amount of stress we're experiencing is totally different because it's that thing,
Mhm.
the trigger, whatever it is, plus our perception of it. So if mom's triggering for us, our stress might be big. If mom's comforting for us, it may be non-existent, right? Um, but
Very
how to
true.
get to your yes, to get to your
Depends on the
question though.
day.
Yeah, yeah. So to get to your question, how do we prepare to go into these kind of gatherings? This would go back to the very first step of the stress less method, the methodology that I teach my clients, which is manage your energy. And that's a kind of more woo way of saying soothe your nervous system. Take care of your nervous system. So usually by this time of the year, we enter into the fall. The fall is a very busy time of the year for many people. We've got a lot going on at work. We've got a lot going on if we've got kids, especially sending them back to school. There's just like it's harvest season, just naturally the way, at least on in the US and our
Yep.
seasonal
It's definitely
cycle.
harvest season here in Minnesota. It's almost
Yes,
over.
yeah. We think about from a survival primal, perspective, this is when we would be like preserving our harvest. We'd be like out, making sure that we have enough food for the winter. And I think we've applied some of that to the way we show up in our work and our schooling and with our children and our relationships. So we're coming off, August, September, October. That's hustle season for many Americans, maybe even Canadians, Northern Hemisphere kind of folks. Then we have we've got all that hustle. Then we go into American Thanksgiving. So our nervous systems, and that's just saying like that's normal every day, like day-to-day life. We've just got stuff going on. Add on top of that, maybe you're in a stressful romantic relationship. Add on top of that, maybe you're taking care of an ill loved one. Add on top of that, maybe you've got a boss you're not getting along with. Whatever, there could be a lot of other things. And so What I found with a lot of the folks that come to me is that before they even enter into these gatherings, their nervous system is already in a heightened state. It's already, their baseline is already anxiety or stress. And so, my first recommendation would be to say, before you go into any family gathering, especially if you're anticipating that you're going to be stressed or it's going to be challenging, is to do whatever it is that you can that is going to make you feel calm, content, safe, happy, whatever, that enter that beautiful state of mind. So for me, one of my values for my nervous system is safety. So what do I do to make myself feel safe? Okay, well, it can be as small as putting on a cozy sweater, right? It could be as big as making sure that I finish my workday at an appropriate time so that I have downtime where I can snuggle up. I can have that sense of physical safety to calm my body's nervous system. It could also mean starting to have some conversations leading up to that gathering. So there's a variety of different, it could also mean going to yoga, right? There's no one size fits all here, but what is it that's going to make you feel like your nervous system is like you are relaxed, that you are calm? Because here's the thing, if our nervous system is heightened, if we are already anxious going into this gathering, our baseline is anxiety and we get a trigger, what happens is, well, what's above anxiety? We're keying up when we have a new trigger. Now we're in panic. Now we're in anger. Now we're in rage. Now we're in whatever is the escalated version of that. Right. So if we can go into those family gatherings with a nervous system that is calm, happy, content, excited, peaceful, whatever it is, whatever that beautiful state of mind is, we get a trigger. Grandpa says, maybe you should lay off the biscuits, right? Whatever, true story. Then we just go up a notch. Okay, now I'm just a little frustrated, but I'm gonna let that slide. I'm just a little frustrated and I'm gonna say, hey, that's not cool, Grandpa. But if I start off at anxiety in that comment, I might lose my mind, right? So before going into any gathering, my first highest recommendation would be to do whatever you can to manage your energy, or if you want to say it more scientifically, calm that nervous system.
Well, I think, and what's really important with that is that actually takes some mindfulness, because if all of a sudden, if you're not thinking about it ahead of time, it's Thanksgiving morning and you're going, oh my God, whatever, potatoes in the oven, potatoes. Yeah, I guess you put the potatoes in the oven.
Sure. Yeah.
I meant the turkey in the oven, whatever's going on. And I think you're right. I think mindfulness is a piece of this that I love to talk about. And, and mindfulness could be, I'm sure it's one of those things that when you were going through, when you were younger, one of those things that they said, try mindfulness, try this, try that. And I do think mindfulness, all mindfulness needs to be is, I'm going into this event with my family. What can I do? Let me think about it a couple of days ahead of time. So I think that that's something that too many of us kind of go, oh yeah, mindfulness, mindfulness when I'm eating, you think about that because you're eating, but mindfulness about something before it happens, I think is really essential. Yeah. So I think that's really,
and synonymous. Really, and synonymous with intention. What is your intention going into this? Or at least very related, very parallel, because we can set our intention, and by simply setting our intention, we can create a completely different outcome because we're going to show up differently, right? No intention, we can go in and put the potatoes in the oven when they're supposed to be boiling in the water, right? So it's we can get frustrated, we can get flustered when we don't take that second. And that's where I think the mindfulness comes in, is taking that second to really be conscious.
So when we go into this event, big, small, either way, and we've kind of prepared how, so we have this intention of how we want this event to go. we're not the only people there. And we can't
Mhm.
really control other people. So how do we go into that event with intention? This is how I want to feel during this. But what do we do when the triggers, when we do get the triggers, when, there are other people in there? And I guess, families can be very argumentative, and over nothing. So let's
Mhm.
talk about that in a way. It could be nothing, that it could have nothing to do with you, but the family, somebody over there is stressing out and they're freaking out. Never had that happen before. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
how do we manage that?
yeah, there's so many ways we can go about this. The first thing, so you shared sort of a more specific example, which is like, what happens if someone's coming at us? And it's not about, us necessarily, but they've created a story and they're coming after us. And there's criticism, there's whatever. One thing that we can try as a tool from Safe Conversations, it's one tiny little piece of the whole process, but we can try mirroring them. And I like to joke that it's sort of like the adult version of I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you, right? Like it's much more wholesome than that, but I think it serves its point. It's a way to protect your energy, to make sure you're taken care of, but also be respectful of them and actually potentially connect with them despite the difference. So for instance, let's say the cook, let's say it's mom. Mom is in the kitchen. She is freaking out. She's frazzled. She's feeling like no one's supporting her. She's doing this all on her own. That may not be true, but this is how she's feeling. And so you walk into the kitchen to, I don't know, grab a cup of ice for grandma. And what mom comes at you. No one's helping me. You never do this. What? Oh, you grabbed the wrong glass. Whatever. What do you do? Well, you can practice saying, well, hey mom, what I'm hearing you say is that you feel like no one's helping you and that I grabbed the wrong glass. Did I get it? Right? It doesn't have to be like my defenses don't have to go online and be like, well, what glass should I have gotten? And mom, I helped you this morning, right? We don't have to do that. We can just simply say, like, just mirror back and ask, did I get it? And they may say no, and then continue that process. Continue mirroring until they feel seen, because oftentimes maybe they don't actually want us to solve the problem. Maybe they do. Maybe she does want you to use a different glass, but right? Like it is mostly about being seen. So that's and understood. So that's one way that we could tackle that. And then another way that we could think about going into these gatherings is, what is the difference between a request versus a boundary? So a lot of times we go into situations and we think, oh, I've just set a boundary with this person. But in fact, we've actually just made a request. So this is a great example. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to a client who was preparing for Thanksgiving. His wife was an alcoholic. Okay, so there's a whole nother level to this dynamic. And so he said to his wife, I I don't want you to bring alcohol to Thanksgiving. Like, I don't want to see alcohol at Thanksgiving. So that's a statement. It feels like a boundary. It feels really firm, but it's
Mm,
not actually a boundary. It's a request.
yeah,
The reason
I see that.
being, yeah, the reason being is that their actions are completely outside of his control. Her actions are completely outside of his control. So what is the boundary? The boundary would look like him having a heartfelt, doesn't mean to be mean, doesn't mean to be, vicious or anything like that. Having a heartfelt conversation with his wife and saying, hey, I just want you to know that alcohol makes me feel uncomfortable. And if you bring alcohol to Thanksgiving, I will be leaving early. He had complete control over whether he stayed or he left,
Right,
or whatever it is
right.
that he decided he was going to do. What is it that he was going to do to take care of himself? But he didn't have complete control when he said, don't bring alcohol, because his
Mm,
wife might do it anyway.
right. That's a good point. That's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting because again, I talk about boundaries in a different way uh, with my clients, but as I'm thinking this through, different but similar at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. So let's dig into these, the psyche of the people in our lives who just no matter what, there's just going to be a fight. They're just going to argue about whatever.
Hmm.
What's going on there? What's going on with them? And then how can we, not get involved in a knockdown, drag out kind of fight?
Yeah.
And I've never
So
experienced that. I've never experienced that. But I do know I do have friends who have kind of brothers and whatever, and have said they I mean it got intense.
it goes south real quick. Yeah, I have friends as well, like I have a friend of mine who her and her brother are completely different sides of the political spectrum, and yet somehow every holiday politics comes up and tears their relationship. It ruptures their relationship every time. So and yet, try to set the boundary with the person to say, let's not talk about that, and it still comes up. So what do you do in those scenarios? Well, first, it's one of the things that I like to say is that it's none of our business what other people think about us. It's none of
Mhm.
our business what other people are thinking in general. It's their business. Um, but we can also come from a perspective of saying, so trying to avoid to do that because that can get us into a dangerous place of assumptions, right? But we can also acknowledge if someone tends toward putting negativity into our relationship, maybe they're going through something. Very likely that they're going through something. They are going through something that we have no idea about. Um, and so how do we, have conversations that are safe for us and respectful of them and what they're going through? So mirroring again would be a really great tool to use. The other thing is if we find ourselves in conversations with somebody who is just they're always picking a fight. It's we can't that we just no matter what we do, it's a fight. Is I would think about, okay, what is the boundary versus request here? What is it that you have control over to take care of yourself at the end of the day? But also, you know, what is it like? What is it we can do to take care of ourselves? But also maybe try to play a game with yourself. You don't have to tell them that you're playing the game, but the game is do your best to challenge yourself to not share your opinion or your side of the story until you can get the other person to say that you fully understand and grasp what they've shared.
Mm,
So very challenging game,
yes, because everybody
but
wants to go, give it.
mhm, but it's the quickest way to de-escalate just about any fight you'll ever be in.
I love that idea.
Because yeah, so you can just continue. You can use mirroring as a tool in that game, but if you sense that tension, that a fight's coming on, just do your best to mirror them back to understand what they're saying and do not speak your opinion until you can ask like, hey, do you feel like I heard you? Do you feel like I understand what you shared? If they say no, well, you're in the game of curiosity and openness and understanding up until the
Mhm.
moment that they say, yes, I feel like
You just
you
you
understand.
just said one of my favorite words, curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when it comes to family, um, friends, but even with our family, people we know so well, right? We don't always know what's going on with them, inside them, what work, whatever it is. And I think when we're curious, it does de-escalate, just by asking a
Mm-hmm.
question. And asking a question that makes sense to ask, I mean, sometimes, I've been in conversations where people have, kind of asked like kind of a itchy question. And it's like, really? Like that didn't help the situation. But the curiosity piece, as a coach, really is one of the things that I'm always delving into. I'm curious to know, what my client's next thought process is, and get them curious about who they are, what they want, and what they desire. And I would think, during these the holidays, we desire a peaceful, enjoyable event. And sometimes we can't help who's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also it's so negative. Like these can be, it's we see the TV programs, Hallmark Channel, like, the happy holidays, the happy Thanksgiving, all the perfect, things that happen. And they're always so positive. The one bad thing happens, and then it's all of a sudden, happy, happy, joy, joy.
Everything's tied up in a beautiful little bow. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, relationships are much more complicated than that. And when negativity comes into that, again, somebody's obviously going through something, but let's talk about just the negativity piece and how that can affect a relationship.
Yeah. Well, so then let's back up for a second and let's define what a relationship is. So, in the safe conversations world, a relationship is two people and the space between them. Okay, so it's two people in the space between them. The way that you can conceptualize this is it's almost like the stars that are in the sky, right? And the space between the stars, there's dark matter. We don't see it. We can't tangibly grasp it, but it's there. And so a relationship is two people and the space between them. And the space between them, we're constantly putting things into that space between. So we can think about it. Here's another analogy, like a relational piggy bank. So every relationship, we have a relational piggy bank. We make a deposit when we put in words of affirmation, when we put in an appreciation, when we put in laughter, when we put in a joke that both people think is funny, right? When we put in all the good stuff. We make a withdrawal when we put in negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And so is our piggy bank, is our bank account overdrafted, right? Is it in the negative or is it in the positive? So let's define negativity for a second too. So negativity is any transaction experienced as a put down.
Okay.
So any transaction experienced as a put down. So it could be, an eye roll. It could be the actual language that you use. It could be your tone of voice, right? Like it could be any of those things. And it could also be anything that's communicating blame, shame, criticism, or judgment, right? So, and the thing about negativity that often trips people up here is that, okay, if negativity is anything experienced as a put down, the person who experiences the put down, the person who perceives it as a put down, if they say that was a put down, that was negativity, then it was negative. It's never up for debate. Let's say, Denise, you say, I don't know, the yellow you're wearing is weird. Let's say you were to say that. I might experience that as a put down, depending on my perception, right? So one part of me could be like, oh, I love being weird. So like, thank you. But the other part of me could be, ouch.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that. So if I say ouch, like if I experience that as an ouch, that was negativity. It's not up for debate. It doesn't matter if Denise was trying to be like, if you were trying to be playful or light, you were trying to play into my quirkiness. No matter what, if the person who experiences negativity says it was negative, it was negative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what about those people in our lives? I have a friend that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head who is just always negative. Like there's nothing happy, nothing positive, nothing good ever. She has nothing ever good to talk about. So clear that up for me. If she's experiencing the negativity and then kind of bringing it toward to everybody else. Is that kind of what's happening there?
Yeah, so when we're talking about relationship, negativity is anything experienced as a put down. So she's if you're in relation, I guess I want clarity on your question, but like, is she bringing negativity into the relationship? Is she bringing things that make other people feel put down?
No, and that's what that I guess that's my question. She's had, she's kind of she's a bit of an Eeyore. How are you?
Mm,
Fine. Well, this happened, and now I have to do this, and just never. And it's funny that I've just said Eeyore because now I can actually hear Eeyore, and in her in
as her, yeah.
when she talks, I can see Eeyore. So she's not necessarily bringing making me feel a negative reaction. It's just she comes with this load of what I would could have considered negativity.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is like how do you navigate the Eeyore, the negative
Yeah,
Nancy?
there we go.
Yeah.
That's the question. Thank you for asking.
Well, I wanted to make sure I was answering the right question. So, um, how do we navigate that? I think we can sit down and decide a couple things, right? First, do I want to be in a relationship with this person? Do I? Um, if I do, then great. How do I be in relationship with them in a way that it sounds like you're asking, like, protects my energy, protects my good feelings?
Mhm.
And so I would say it goes back to really using some of the key components of safe conversations, which is,
Mhm.
one of which is mirroring. You don't have to, a lot of us make the mistake of adding fuel to the fire with
Mhm.
those negative Nancy's, right? Oh, I'm
Mhm.
so sorry that happened to you, right? It may have been awful. It may have sucked, but um, oftentimes when we're sharing something, and I'm broad brushstroking here, so everything's nuanced, but like oftentimes people just want to feel understood. They just want to feel seen and understood and connected. Um, so you can use that, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me
Love
and
that
sticks to you.
idea.
Use mirroring with
Mhm.
that person and mirror until they say you've got it. You know, oh, I'm hearing that, you had a really hard day, you got stuck in traffic, you were late to work, your boss pulled you into the office and you were reprimanded. Did I get it? We don't have to we don't have to be like, oh, poor, pitiful you. We don't have to take on their emotions. That's not our job. Um, and so that's, one way of navigating it. It's challenging. It's certainly challenging. But it is about, so that's one way. And then the other way would be, again, like the identifying what it is that you need, what it is that you want. What are your intentions going into this gathering or social situation or even the relationship, and deciding, what is it that you need to take care of yourself? Maybe we spend less time with this friend because
Mhm.
it just doesn't feel good. That's okay. That's totally okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And I would say that it's okay if it's a friend or a family member too,
yeah.
because we definitely have those people in our lives that we're connected to. And some family members are really hard to, you can't exactly, I mean, it's hard to get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want
It's
to
hard to
take a
shake.
quick minute just to open up and see if our guest has a question or a comment. Kathleen, if you're able to, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, would love to hear from you. Um, we can always continue.
That's
And
the
if you,
challenge with off camera. We never know. We never know.
yep.
if we're eating a
And so
sandwich or whatnot.
we'll just keep on keeping on. So one of the things, when we were preparing for this, one of the questions that you want, that, you know, like the three questions that, and I want to get to, I think we've touched on the first two. This is an interesting one. Holiday has happened, somebody feels slighted, whatever it may be. How does one repair a
Mm,
rupture in a connection in with a relationship?
yeah.
How do we do
So
that?
so one of my favorite tools is to in each relationship have a little conversation before a rupture happens to share, okay, what happens when what do we say, what do we do when we experience negativity? So rather than having to be like, oh my goodness, Denise, like you hurt my feelings because you said my yellow shirt was weird, right? I can just say, we've decided on a word, and I can just say, I don't know, Himalayan sea salt. We can like whatever the word is. It can be silly. It could also be ouch, right? But I could say Himalayan sea salt, and it gets that reaction, which is like, oh my, like it's that's so silly. And you know
Mhm.
that I've experienced a rupture. Is there a
So okay, so what when you just said that, made me think of the movie with the Fockers, Muskrat.
oh,
Muskrat. That was his word, was Muskrat. I think everyone was like, what is he talking about? God.
that's such a good movie. Oh my gosh, I have to rewatch that. I haven't watched that since I haven't watched that since I was young. So having this new lens of safe conversations should be really interesting to rewatch that.
Now that we've said that, I'm like, oh, I've got to watch that too, because I remember when I watched it, I mean, it was funny, but there was a meaning there behind it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can use like we could choose that, and I chose that word because it was funny. Also, I have a salt lamp right next to me, so Himalayan sea salt, and you have that response because it's like we knew this was our word, but it's such a silly word. It's so random, so we don't feed into the negativity ahead of time. But then also, it's the key for you and I to do a couple things. One is if you already know, like you've got the intuitive sense and you're like, oh yeah, I see what I did there. You can just say, oh, let me retry it. Let me resend that. I love the color of your shirt. Or let me resend that. Um, whatever it is that you would, however you would resend it in a
Mhm.
positive way. Um, you could also, so that's one way is to resend, just like intuitively know, like you're like, I see what I did there, and resend the reaction or the sentence or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Another option is to be like, okay, you're flabbergasted. You're like, I don't know what I did here. I have no idea. Like I thought you thought weird was a compliment. I have no whatever. Then you could say, hey Carlee, could you model how
Mhm.
you would like that situation to have gone? So I could say, actually, it wasn't the words that you said. It was the tone of voice. So would you be able to send that back like a little more perky, right?
I could
Um,
do Courtney.
yeah, right. That's one way. Another way could be, depending on your relationship with the person, it could be as simple as a hug, right? It could be as simple as a physical reconnection. It doesn't need to be redone. We don't need to talk about it. It's just, oof, let me comfort you.
Mhm.
Um, and it could also be like, so that being said, it could be just a gesture of some kind, right? Like that's where the flowers came from, in society, getting the flowers, a small gift. Um, that's another way to repair. And if it's a really, it's a really deep rupture, let's say it was a bad one, then you might invite the other person into a formal safe conversations dialogue about what just transpired. So those are a couple of ways. So first would be to resend just intuitively. The second would be to ask for a remodel and then resend based on that knowledge. The third would be, offer a gesture of repair. It could be a hug, could be a handshake, could be a gift, flowers, do the dishes, whatever. Um, and then that last one, if it's a really deep rupture, offering to have a formal, safe conversation, dialogue about it.
Would that be something that you would do at another time? Or,
Yeah.
okay.
So it depends. It depends. So with the safe conversations dialogue, the very first step in the process is to ask for an appointment. So that is a fancy way of saying, is now a good time to talk about blank? So we experience a rupture. I say Himalayan sea salt. We know, okay, this is triggering some big stuff from my past because the word weird triggers my trauma for whatever reason, right? We know we're in the middle of an interview. Okay, you might say to me, is now a good time to talk about the sweater thing? And I might say, yeah, probably not. I don't really want to talk about this in public, but can we talk about it when we're done? Can we talk about it this evening after dinner? Right? Whatever you do, though, you make sure I may be on board to talk about it right away. But if I'm not, you make sure that you create the appointment for when you're going to talk about it, and then you show up.
What I love about what you're saying is not that it takes the emotion, it takes the reaction. And I think that's what so much of the stress in the conversations that we have at gatherings, family gatherings is just that. It's the reactions to things instead of kind of stepping back and thinking through a little bit of mindfulness. Uh, and having that conversation or having that conversation on a different level. It's not with this aggravation. I'm angry, I'm upset with what you said. It's, can we talk about this and take it, take it outside in a good way.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
uh, so I really love what I'm hearing about that in this situation, because too often, and we see this, time and again, whether it's friends, family, people get so emotional about and in the reaction. I mean, obviously, if somebody says something that's hurtful for you, you're allowed to have that emotion.
Mhm.
But then it's the escalation of that emotion from both sides
Yes.
that I think
Yeah.
really can create the rupture or the big
Yeah.
fight in the family.
Yeah. And that's exactly why that's the game. The game is you don't share your side of the street until you can get that other person to say that they think that you fully understand them,
Mhm.
because that is exactly what happens. And that's why mirroring is so important, where you have one person talking, one person listening, because it prevents the escalation. I say something, you mirror me, then I feel fully heard and I can back down, I can relax. But if I say something and then it triggers you to say something and then that triggers me, we're having something called parallel dialogue, where
Mhm.
two people are talking and no one's actually really listening. And that's where things can escalate. And so we want to move to horizontal dialogue, which is a fancy way of saying one person talking, one person listening to completion, and then you can switch, right? You both can have your opinions expressed, but you wait until that one side of the street has been cleared and fully understood before you go to the other side.
Mhm. Amazing. I'm already like, oh, like I'm already ready for a family gathering. I mean, I have a small family. I'm like, I want to have a big family gathering now, just to make sure, just so I can practice some of the tools I've just learned.
I love
So
that.
we're coming up to time. So I want to make sure that to ask the question is what is something that you want us to hear that we haven't had a chance to speak about yet?
Mm. I would just say that if you're in relationship with someone, anyone, mom, brother, colleague, boyfriend, girlfriend, with romantic, whatever, and you're feeling like so disconnected and so lonely and so misunderstood or so frustrated, and you feel like you've tried everything and you don't know where to go next, first and foremost, you're not alone. Um, you're not alone. There's so many people who struggle with connection. There's a loneliness epidemic, unfortunately. And I want to share that as someone who's been there, there is a way out. And I think that, focus, there's so many ways to go with this, but yeah, I just want to reiterate, focusing on what you can control, focusing on taking care of yourself. And then of course, all of the tools that we talked about today, they're going to help. Even if the other person isn't on board, they're going to help. But do what you can to take care of yourself and also implement these tools at the same time.
I love it. And we will make sure, I'll make sure that, we have the show notes have, kind of spells out some of the tools, mirror, mirror, mirror. I got that one. That's the one that I'm working on, is the mirroring. And all of the great things that we've had this conversation about, also how people can connect with you. I'll make sure that all of that information is there. But I also wanted to just real quickly in the last couple of minutes, when we started the conversation, you had mentioned about your process, your 5-step process, and we talked about the first one. I just want to have you just tell us, kind of in general, what is the process, or tell us a little bit about it, so people understand a little bit more. What if they hear, what, that's me, or that's my sister, so they know the person in their life who may need your help.
Yeah. So I would say, the person that could use my support, or that I would love to work with, let's say it that way, that I would really love to work with, would be that person who's feeling disconnected. They've got an important relationship in their life, and they just feel like they're banging their head against the wall and they don't know what to do. The stress less method, we talked about that first step, which is to manage your energy. The stress less method is about your side of the street, but it also teaches you some tools like mirroring that I've talked about today, that can help you in relationships. So the first step, manage your energy. The second step is to identify your blocks. So remember earlier when I said stress is the thing plus our perception of the thing equals our stress. And so what are the ways, that perception piece, what are the ways in which we are sabotaging our relationships, sabotaging our peace of mind, and we have no idea? Okay, we're smart people. It's not that if we knew what to do, we would do it. And so step 2 is identifying those ways in which we're sabotaging our peace in our relationships. Step 3 is to create a plan. So we're going to discover our saboteurs. We're going to discover the blocks that are getting in the way. Okay, well, that might be real new information. What do we tackle first, right? So we create a plan to address everything piece by piece, one step at a time. And then step 4 is to remove those blocks. Although I'd like to rebrand that and say quiet those blocks, right? And so it's not about, right? A lot of us have hard wiring. So for instance, one of my blocks is hypervigilance. Because of my trauma experience, I'm always looking, where's the other shoe going to drop? Where can I don't know if I can trust that person, right? That's just my hard wiring. It's going to be really, really hard to completely remove that block because it's literally wired into my physiology. But I've come to a place through the work, through the stress less method, through the process, that voice, that little voice or that wiring isn't the thing that's running the show anymore. So that's step 4 is I want to rebrand it. It's called remove the blocks, but I'm going to probably say quiet them down. Let the good side of you, that higher self side of you, the love side of you run the show. And then step 5 is embrace grace. And this is the point of the process where we understand I'm not perfect, nor am I meant to be perfect. I'm going to fall off the wagon every once in a while, but I'm going to get back up. I'm going to start back at step 1. I'm going to work step 2. I'm going to manage my energy. I'm going to reconnect with my blocks and my saboteurs. I'm going to just continue this journey for life. It's maintenance mode in some ways, but it's an acknowledgement that like, hey, I'm not perfect. And this is the lifelong journey that I'm on. And I'm willing to do the work because that's what it takes to find that inner freedom.
Right. And none of us are perfect. It's never about perfection. I think it's important that that you said that. So wonderful. Thank you, Carlee. This has been great. The time goes so quick when you're having a great conversation, and it's interesting and intriguing. So thank you so much for this information. One, because I know it's going to help people, yes, get through the holidays and deal with, holiday stress and family stress, but it really is something that is going to help them through the rest of the year and the rest of their life. And I encourage all of you who are listening to the replay, if this is something that you are struggling with or have any questions about, please make sure you connect with Carlee. All of her contact information is in the show notes, which you should see if you're watching watching the replay. They're all there. And I really do encourage you, take the step. You're the person that can make your life healthier, happier, and really enjoy the life that you are living. Nothing's perfect, never ever will be, but it can always get a little bit better. So thank you again, Carlee. And with that, I'm going to close. Thank you again, everyone. Kathleen, thank you for being with us. It's been a great conversation. And I will see you guys next time on another episode of Meaningful Conversations. Have a great day, everyone. Happy holidays.